maybe do a kind of quick introduction. So my name is Fletcher. I am the CEO of the Hire Talent. We own a variety of assessment tools. We have over 30 plus different assessment tools. Integrity First is a tool that we came across last summer. We had a bunch of shared clients using it, and we just fell in love with the science and the impact that it makes in the business. We also have a wonderful just performance hiring software platform we call Discovered. It is amazing for talent evaluation, talent selection, and just recruitment marketing. So, it's a big topic here. And the funny thing is, right, when we were introduced to Integrity First, being assessment people, it's all about the quality hire, right? People are going to be good culture fits, good integrity fits, good attitude people, good team players, right? And, our whole premise of what we've done for the last 42 years is hiring talented team players, avoiding problem generators, avoiding those talented terrorists, those people that make our life miserable at work. And the connection to work comp is not something that we really ever thought about until we met Gary. And Gary is a lifelong risk management guy, and I'll let you tell us your story a little bit better, but you have some remarkable experiences with hiring for integrity and what kind of impact that has on work comp claims and the cost of the claims, severity of those claims, as well as turnover, which falls a little bit outside your purview, but they all seem to tie together. And so we're going to talk a lot about some of these case studies and the recent science that has been done with this concept here. So Gary, tell us a little bit about how your background and what you do, and I guess your connection here.
Well, I have a company, it's called The Edge, and I've been in business for 13 years. Prior to that, I've started 2 national work comp practices for different brokers. And what I do, simply put, is I look for money in large work comp programs. When I say that, the goal is reducing claim costs, and I look at everything from management issues to who you hire and fire and challenges in that area, to safety, and then also how claims are managed. So it's a broad picture. I've done many of the companies I've done, you would highly be recognized. Fortune 500 type companies, from auto manufacturers to hospitality to just about every different industry. So I do have a presentation that I would like to move over to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good to share.
I think it's saying host disable participant screen sharing.
Okay, let me see here. I'm always. Let's see here. Advanced sharing options. You are a host, right? Maybe I made you a panelist. Okay, let me try this. Now good, give it a try.
Okay, I think we're gonna be there.
Is that gonna work?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, again, this is Fletcher and myself. The company I have is called The Edge, and I'm going to get right into it. So our topic today is risky hires. Stop hiring your next work comp claim. It's interesting, when I first started working with many companies, 80% of the time work comp does what it's supposed to be doing. People do get hurt, they get treatment, and they come back to work, and we're taking care of employees, and the process is good. That really works pretty well. However, about 20% of the time we have we call challenging claims, problems and issues. And I end up spending about 80% of my time focused on those issues, with 20% of the claims. And when I first start talking with employers, they focus on the problems. Okay, we don't talk about the good stuff. And so I will hear they'll talk about a claim and they will say, oh, that person's got a terrible attitude, they're a cheater, it's fraud, they're lazy. They have all these descriptions for these people that they've hired and they have work comp claims from. And it's interesting because a lot of times we're trying to get people back to work and they go, well, I don't want them back to work. They're terrible. They're not productive. And I kind of go, why do you have them employed for you? Okay. Or some of those issues with it. And very often I hear, okay, we were going to lay him off on Friday, but he filed the work comp claim on Thursday. I can't tell you how often I hear something like that. So the people that file or get involved in work comp claims, very often we have all kinds of other challenges out there. I've kept this quote for 20 years. I was working with a very large, one of the nation's largest drywall firms. And the president said to me, he goes, it seems like personnel problems become work comp problems. And usually when I talk to employers, they will nod their head and agree with that. Also, he commented, bad employees sure make terrible claimants. And I find that to be the case. In the current environment, I'm seeing a dramatic increase in claims coming from, we call new hires. New hires we define as they're hurt within the first year of employment. And I just did a study for a large employer, 40% of their claims are coming from new hires. And so I did a study, I looked at the top 20 claims. Of those, 45% of the claims were from what we call new hires. And I have a summary of 3 of those claims I'll walk you through to show you the types of things that I'm seeing. To protect the innocent, I've changed their names. I'm using Peterson for last name and all these people here. I used to use Smith, and some guy gave me a real hard time one time on that. But so in this case, Anna Peterson. And so the description you'd see on a loss run goes, well, given patient care, she noticed pain in her shoulder. These are green losses, meaning they will develop. The current value is at $98,000, which is quite high and painful. So here's the rest of the story. She's been with the employer for 41 days. The claim was reported, came after the supervisor. The supervisor called her and said, can you work some overtime? And she said, no. And then she said, and I also, I hurt my shoulder. And so they tried to investigate. The employee could not describe an incident, the time she did something with a patient. She just said she's hurting. And so we have no real description of the case. She went and she has her diagnosis was strain, rotator cuff tear, adhesive capsulitis, that's called frozen shoulder, closed fracture head of the right humerus. Obviously, this person that never noticed or complained or had an issue at work other than general pain, they had pre-existing injuries or came with them injured. Actually, the closed fracture was an older fracture on that end of it. And then most interesting, she had an ISO score of 999. And what that means is we do indexing whenever there's a claim. And what the ISO score runs from 0, meaning you never really had prior claims or issues and challenges. The highest you can get is 999. Okay, that is the highest score. And she has the highest score. So this is the case where obviously we're dealing with a lot of other issues and it's a painful situation.
So that means that this person has had a lot
multiple claims. They live with people with multiple claims. And when they're 999, it's almost always is a lot of game. Game players, what they can say.
There's only like one state that allows you to look at this before you hire people. I mean, this is not type of information.
Right. Yeah, I wish we could. You can't do that.
People for, right?
In the old days, we used to have a service that was called Avert, and you could actually look up their experience ahead of time. You couldn't use that to not hire them, but if they lied about not working for that employer, You use that. That doesn't really exist anymore. So
Mhm.
this is all done after you have a claim. You've hired them, they have a claim, and then you get the index
Yeah, the claims
score on that.
professionals, insurance companies, claims management people. I mean, you get to see this all after the fact.
And part of that is when they're doing settlements, you're looking at how much of a settlement did they already get for the same injury, the same body part, and you get into
Mhm.
all kinds of. Again, in work comp, it really varies greatly by state,
Yeah.
which makes the industry very challenging. So here's another case. It's my brother Paul Peterson, obviously. Yeah, the official description in the loss run was employee accidentally spilled liquid on the floor. Doesn't tell us anything. So looking at the rest of the story, been there 30 days. He had just instructed a dietary aide to mop the floor. Then he walked over and fell on the wet floor. And there was no reason for him to be in that area. He just went over there, had this fall, and he's laying on the ground. He says he hurt his leg, his left leg, left arm, shoulder, and head. He wanted an ambulance called, and the whole thing seemed staged and set up so he'd have a witness and do this fall. Well, it turns out, he's a 30-day employee. He doesn't have time off coming up. He had a trip planned to go overseas to where he was from. A few days after the injury, he had flights scheduled, and he was going to be gone for a month. Well, he couldn't get time off, or didn't ask for time off. He created his own vehicle to get time off. He pretended to get hurt on it. So he was terminated for personal issues. Again, a very expensive issue, and again, with somebody that has questionable integrity. I'll do one more. This is really an interesting case. Heidi, she struck on head by a plastic lid on ice machine. So if you could picture you're getting in and you're getting a scoop of ice out of the ice machine. We used to have them on all the hotels and things. It's a plastic lid. It doesn't weigh very much. Plus, it can only fall so far if you're partway in there. And so here's a story. She'd been with the employer for 9 months. The employee had a traumatic brain injury 3 years prior, had a serious motor vehicle accident. And she's had multiple concussions since, which doesn't make sense, but she keeps having concussions and injuries that happen. So prior to the work comp claim, the employees had multiple disruptions in her employment, including recurring illnesses. She's always missing work. She was on a cruise and had a hand injury. She was out of work for 2 months with concussion disorder and had to be eased back into work starting at 4 hours a week. We can only increase it by 2 hours each week in those type of increments. So forget about the work comp case. It's been just a challenging 9 months with this employee. So this employee, the day that she was given notice of benefits were being discontinued, she filed a new claim for an injury to her hand. So literally the day that she was being shut down. So
Same
quite
hand
weird.
she heard on the cruise.
Yeah, that must have been it. So anyways, these are the types of things I'm seeing, and these are the most frustrating things when you're in safety or you're working with your clients or you're trying to control losses. It's really challenging in this case. We shut a lot of these down. We do a lot of surveillance and do that stuff, but it's very frustrating. One thing we notice, a lot of these people, they are smart. Okay, it's not that they're dumb. They know how to kind of play the game. And there's a quote Warren Buffett had was, in looking for people to hire, you look for 3 qualities: integrity, intelligence, and energy. If they don't have the first, the other 2 will kill you. And obviously, those are tough situations if you have somebody very intelligent with no integrity.
There's a guy, Mark Murphy, and he has this really cool think tank called Leadership IQ. And he calls the people missing item number 1 and who have lots of number 2 and 3 talented terrors.
Wow.
That was my favorite term for
I
those folks.
will,
I think we've
I
all
will
worked with one of those people. They were really good at what they did, but they were so disruptive. It was like a problem.
So good news is there's a very simple, inexpensive, easy to use tool to prevent high risk job applicants from being considered in the hiring process. And it's overt integrity testing is what we're going to be talking about here. But it is amazingly simple, easy to use. It's been out there for 30 plus years. There's never been litigation. And I use it with many of my clients because we are reducing the claims from challenging individuals like we just walked through. So what's integrity testing? Overt integrity testing, it's a pre-employment assessment tool. It's looking for 4 high-risk behaviors: hostility, substance abuse, theft, and faking. They just simply can't tell the truth. The test takes less than 10 minutes to take. It's 54 questions, 5th grade reading level, bilingual. There's actually a number of different languages that can be used. Instant results, and the results are either qualified or unqualified, meaning if they're unqualified, you're not supposed to hire the individual on that end of it. The real benefit of this tool is you don't need to share the results with the applicant. So this is done early in the process. Somebody completes an application. This test is automatically given to them. It's done online, and we'll show you some of the results and what that looks like. And you simply just don't go forward with that applicant if they're unqualified. And I did a presentation last week. It was amazing. Instantly, it was the head of HR for a large organization. He goes, "This is going to be positive cash flow because I'm not spending all that money on drug testing and background screening and other things. I don't recommend you buy it for that reason, but for some employers, using this tool up front saves money."
Well, in some of the large
And
scientific studies, actually, you hover around a 5% fail rate on drug testing and drug screening. And this is, this happened to me. So I used to work for a commercial dish machine company. I think you used to work for a drywall company, hiring a lot of techs, a lot of service techs. We're working with soap. Apparently is very dangerous. It is very dangerous. I did it for a long time. It's caustic, gets your eyes, really awful thing. But driving trucks or working on heavy equipment, so we hired, a lot of blue collar type of workers, right? And we had to, by our insurance required, we do drug testing and screening and, that kind of thing. And, 1 in 5 or 5%, it's not that many, but, we're desperate to hire people, right? You find this person and you're like, Joe is going to be amazing. He's going to be the next best service tech I've ever hired. I finally get to fill this position, right? And we did, we'd have a first interview, we'd have an interview with a manager, we'd take them on a working interview, a ride along, right? We'd check references. So, there's like 4 steps there. That takes, if you're good at it, you could do it in a week, but it always took like 2 or 3 weeks to get them through this process. And then you go, "Joe, I can't wait for you to join the team. Here's your offer. And, please go down to the clinic and pee in a cup." Right. And, the clinic calls back like 2 days later and says, "I'm sorry, Joe's been using illicit drugs, and we have to rescind the offer." Well, by that time, we're done, right? We shut down our job ads. We stopped interviewing. We have nobody in our pipeline. And we're back to square one. And it might have taken us a month or 2 or 3 months just to find Joe, to get him to that process, another few weeks to get him through the interview process to the drug test. So, I might be anywhere from 30 to like 1 month to 6 months into my search to only find out Joe does drugs, right? And the study shows that the people who do this, your fail rates go from around the typical 5% to sub 1%.
Correct. Interesting study. Yeah. So it really, now no test is perfect, but this picks up a lot. And The test actually, most of the time we're seeing people admit to smoking pot at work, okay, which sounds crazy, but they admit to smoking pot at work. And we've used this with companies that do drug testing, pre-hire or post offer. And we have, after accident, they do testing, and so many of them test positive for pot or other drugs in the system, even though we drug tested. And so a lot of people learn how to beat the drug test so they can get hired or clean up ahead of time.
Yeah.
So this test, I think it's really important. So people always look at something like this and they, are there concerns, liability and whatnot, but EEOC requires a test be either non-discriminatory or validated to be compliant, and the test, the integrity first test is both. And I just haven't seen any issues from an EEOC standpoint on that. The data is looked at quarterly by professors to make sure that we're not being discriminated against any protected class, and we haven't seen any issues in that. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all.
Yeah,
Fletcher?
well, I always like to frame this a different way. Having a great assessment tool, whether it's this one or many others that are out there, it's actually doing the opposite. So, the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are a really important thing. So, first of all, I mean, the more diverse workforces are more profitable, have better cultures, more creativity, and all these other things. So, it's a really important issue to be focused on in your business. And having an assessment that is unbiased, it's doing the exact opposite of what most people talk about when we're talking about assessments here. They're creating a more inclusive environment, so you can be bringing in a more diverse workforce and eliminating the interviewer bias, because frankly most of the people doing the hiring look like being Gary, right? And there's that unconscious bias. No matter how conscious we are about our desire to build a more diverse workplace, there's these issues that come up, right? They read a name on a resume, they see somebody that doesn't look like them, and no matter what they say, there is a bit of unconscious bias, to a lot of bias to those folks. And so a good assessment is the best tool that you can use for improving your DEI initiatives.
Great comments. Thank you. So why do employers use this test? Well, from a work comp standpoint, based on over 500,000 data points, we see a 48% reduction in claim frequency, 19% in severity, and then turnover reduction of 30%. And these are dramatic numbers in terms of the impact this tool has on these things. I focus on the work comp, but also get involved in the turnover. I do ROI analysis both before and after a program's in place. If somebody on this call would like me to look at their data, and I can do an ROI analysis and tell you what I would suggest would be the potential return on investment. It's interesting that the ROI is so high on this tool that I'll work out with the client's numbers. I'll tell what the number is, and then I go, well, let's cut it in half. Let's cut it in half again. The ROI is just that strong for using this tool.
Yeah, I think the reduction of turnover these days, I mean, the challenge that employers have in just finding people, and then the retention issues. I mean, we just wrote a white paper on this, but truck drivers, like the turnover rate is like 98%. In healthcare, you're hovering somewhere between 60 and 70% turnovers. I think you have a client who's probably closer to 90% turnover, and they're in a large healthcare setting, right? So, I mean, the disruption in the company culture, the environment, the productivity is huge. And imagine being an HR person or a recruiter. Maybe there's some HR people and recruiters on this call here. And you fill the role, and 30 days later or a week later, and we've heard this story all the time, that person turns over. they quit, they get fired, they're terrible, whatever happens. Hopefully they don't file a work comp claim on their way to the unemployment office while they're at it, right? But all that work that went into filling that role, it's creating double or triple the amount of effort, right? So you fill the role, and now you got to go backfill it again. This kind of story of like, well, I spent all this time and energy just to find this person, get them in there, and then all that time and energy that was spent training and onboarding that person, even if it's only a week's worth of effort, that means your best person is preoccupied training and teaching this person. Their productivity is going down. They still got to do all the work that they normally had to do, right? Now they're getting burnt out. And if that cycle repeats enough times, your best people begin to leave, because that turnover is just a culture, an environment, and a burnout machine for organizations. So it's really, really important that we get hiring right, despite the challenges of that we have in just finding people to even show up, right? And having a really strong recruitment marketing program with really strong talent evaluation programs, and that's assessments like this, but there's a lot of other things that you got to be conscientious of in that. And it's easier said than done. It's a little bit of effort. It's like just going, the thing about exercise, it's like, well, do you have to go to the gym every day for an hour? Is that realistic? Well, some of us don't have time for that, right? But if you just like walk for 10 minutes every day, like we can all find 10 minutes to go for a walk, right? If you just think about it that way, you can start to enact these really easy, simple things that will make your life so much better on the back end, right?
Thanks. This is it was a company that does a lot of work in the aviation industry, a lot of the labor around airports. And so this is their studies and the information that they provided us. And prior to doing the integrity testing, 18% of their people that they would hire would make it a year. Okay. And so that's what they measured. And then after implementing the integrity testing, they found 49% of the people would make it a year. And again, high turnover, tough industry, very challenging for them. The cost savings on something like this is just enormous from that. And I think they were in like 48 airports at that time. They also looked at and showed us the different things they measure, from attendance to failure to return from leave or quit without notice and violation of company safety policy. They had a lot of the data that they provided us about results of it, the test. And this is probably one of the most interesting studies that I've seen. It probably won't ever be repeated. So there was a large pest control company. The head of HR was very interested in using this tool. Well, she wanted to make sure it worked before she really used this. So what she did is she signed up for it and tested everybody for a year, but didn't look if they were qualified or unqualified. She just simply hired everyone. And at the end of the year, she went back and wanted to report, did it make a difference or not make a difference? Now, we do not recommend you doing this for the reason of, in their particular case, you have people driving vehicles down the road. If you have somebody that admits to drug use and other things, we have people going into people's houses and doing things if they admit to theft and substance abuse and all kinds of issues. So again, not something we would recommend, but they did it. They provided us the results, and this is what they shared with us. So the turnover rate for the qualified individuals was 25%, and it was 65% for the unqualified. 98% of the qualified candidates were graded as either A or B by their managers. Terminated employees usually discharged for reasons related why unqualified. 75% of their at-fault accidents were committed by those who were unqualified. Unqualified candidates were much more likely to quit without notice. And the only injuries that became work comp claims were turned in by people who were unqualified. So great blind study, love it. Wish we could do more of them, but you can't. But tremendous results in terms of of showing the difference that this tool makes.
Well,
Yeah,
I
we
mean, that's
talked.
one thing we always encourage clients to go through the study, the scientific process with this. And that's one of the interesting things, I'm an assessment guy, I believe in the science, and I don't do anything that's not fact driven. And so, we really encourage clients to go through a fact driven, science driven hiring system, right? And so we support our clients in that. And so it's a big deal for me, Gary.
I always do my own studies for my clients
Yeah.
that I have, and to get the information. And early on, I had one situation where I had a large restaurant group. I had them implement this tool. I couldn't wait to see the end of the results at the end of the year. So at 11 months, I downloaded all the information, and I wanted to see the results. Well, it didn't show any results. The testing group didn't look any better, and I was sick. I was literally sick over it. And I called the Integrity First people up, and I go, well, "What's the story here?" And they go, "Before it's never happened. So let's look at the data." And what we found out was a number of store managers were either not giving them the test, or gave them the test and they were unqualified. They still hired. After we pulled that data out, we had an 84% difference between the two groups. It was enormous. But so I bring that up. It's important to measure and see the results. And I've never had a program where I haven't seen the projected results.
That'd be an inadvertent blind study.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple different types of tests out there. There's covert, where if I thought Fletcher was stealing, would I say something, or overt, and where I'm telling you, I steal this much money. And I'm going to show you some of these questions. And for some people who have not taken a test like this or seen this, it may sound kind of surprising. So sample question, okay, excluding pills you got from the doctor, prescriptions, which of the following drugs do you use? And you can see the ones listed here. I probably should update this a little bit on the different drugs used. It was interesting. There was a study done by the Motor Vehicle Association for 2022, but I'm surprised at how many truck drivers tested positive for meth, which is a scary thought with 18-wheelers going down the road on that end of it. But very straightforward. I either say I use the stuff or I don't use the stuff.
And who would ever ask that in an interview? And if you did, and said, "Hey, Gary, do you smoke pot while at work?"
Yeah.
And you said, "Yeah," what would you say to that person? "Thanks for coming in, but I think you're going to be a better fit somewhere else," right?
Well, just like this question, have you ever pretended to have a work injury in order to collect workers' compensation? Yes, people answer this question. And part of the mentality on it is they think, okay, I've done it once, but I'm not like, Fletcher or somebody else. I know he does it every year to get off to go surfing or to do something of that nature, to term it. And so, but it's interesting. They do respond and they do answer the questions given to them on online tests. Another question, have you hit somebody in anger in the past year? And you can see the answers there. Now, the hostility scale on this, it really it is based on an algorithm of different answers. We took this test once with a group of 17, 18 people in a PowerPoint, and we were kind of gaming it to see how we would do. And we tried to feel for hostility, and we didn't, which was kind of scary. But 1%, I don't care if it's white collar, blue collar, what part of the country, it seems like right at 1% fail for hostility. And these are people you just do not want out there. It's been shown that hostile people, they interview really well. They're good at covering things up and they interview well. So they're really important. I do a lot of work in senior care, and talk about an area where you don't want somebody that's hostile or gets angry because working with somebody with Alzheimer's and different things. It's a challenging environment. It's really important we aren't putting those type of people working with them on that, along with drugs and theft and everything else. So here's a sample question. How often have you told a lie since age 16? And this is what we call the faking scale. Well, if you've never told a lie, you've never been angry, you've never, you have to get there's 14 questions related to this blended into the test. You have to get all 14 wrong. If you answer all 14 that way, you are either lying or have problems or you have other issues. We probably don't want you working for us. But I always joke about I would get tripped on a question that was related to, have you ever pretended to be sick to get out of work? Well, I've always worked for myself, so who would I pretend to? So I would have to, I would say no, but that wouldn't fail me. I'd have to fail, the other 13 questions. So why would somebody admit to these high-risk behaviors? And the term is cognitive dissonance. We're rationalizing risky behaviors as normal. And so it's easy to say, I wouldn't do that. And then I was asked, by the way, speeding is not on this test, and this test is only for new applicants or new hires. It's not used on existing workforce. But I would say, well, what about speeding? Well, I assume there's a number of people on this call, including me, that would admit, yes, I do go above the speed limit. I know it's wrong. I know it's against the law. And yes, I'll admit to it. That's the way some of these people think about these other high-risk behaviors. Somebody who uses fentanyl or uses heroin on a daily basis, they simply believe, they're a better person when they're high, and they get along with people better, and people like them better. And it's part of that rationalization of the different behaviors. But I always say that, and usually people in the audience will go, "Yeah, I admit to speeding. I know it's wrong." Across the board, these are the results of on a large scale basis of the tests for the people that are unqualified. 5% for drug use, 8% on theft, 12% on faking, and 1% on hostility. And it varies a little bit each year. Overall, about 23% of the people are non-qualified on that. So again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to note that this comes from a massive study that was done just a couple of years ago with over 550,000 respondents to the survey who were taking this to get a job in healthcare, construction, warehouse logistics, drivers, hospitality. So across a variety of kind of frontline work type environments. And there's 550,000 data points, and this went into this massive scientific journal article about integrity testing and using hiring. So this data, and again, as I mentioned before, I'm a science-based guy. I don't know of a single assessment product on the market that has that much data and that massive of a study behind it. I don't care, Wonderlic, Predictive Index, all these big names out there, none of them have this much data.
Great points. Just to give you an idea of on the process, somebody takes a test, you log in with a password. Somebody takes a test, the results are in there instantly. It will be either, if you see here on the right, it's non-qualified or qualified, and you can see in this case it's high-end theft, high-end drugs, which is a common occurrence on that. But high means high risk in those particular areas, and you can set this up so that the results are, we can see this much information at whatever level in your department or who's doing the hiring. And then you can get into other things that get into a lot more detail in terms of the different reasons why they failed the test on it. So it's very helpful, because we often get asked that, well, how come they're not, and they can look at that and find out why people are failing. This is a study I just completed. It's based at the end of 2022. I have a very large healthcare client who we did a pilot study originally of the integrity testing. We did 10 major locations. The results were incredible, and we had great results. So after doing that, that was 12 months, we rolled out across the nation and all the rest of the locations. And so right in the middle of that, COVID hit, and they get concerned after the requirement that employees were simply quitting because they wouldn't get vaccinated. And so it was a real challenge for them. So they paused the program. So it's the first time, very large study, we have before integrity testing, after doing the integrity testing, and then after they paused doing the testing, and we're looking forward to them moving forward with this test here shortly. So before doing integrity testing, 33% of the incurred dollars, what we spend on claims, was coming from new hires employed less than a year. After implementing it, and understand some of these locations only had it in place for 6 months, and it takes a while before you hire, and then they have up to the year to report it, but it already dropped to 18.2%. Then after stopping the integrity testing, it popped up to 38.4%, which is very dramatic. So we thought, well, what would it be if we just looked at the pilot locations? And the pilot locations are 35% before doing integrity testing, 23% after doing integrity testing, and then since then it's popped up to over 60% of the costs are. So that's what's really driving their claims. And I'm seeing this across the board with employers. It's been challenging in hiring, and some of these people, whether you're large like this and you write the check out for the claim, or you buy insurance and it's based on your experience rating where you live with it for 3 years, these are types of claims that are just hard to control. It's very, very challenging.
So if you're saying $40 million claims, so 33% of that is 13 million of that 40 million is coming from 33%?
This would be over the whole testing period. And so it would be, it'd be when they first looked at it, it might have been the 20 million and then 10 million and then 10 million. But yes, so like a third of the dollars, or if they hadn't done integrity testing and nothing changed, then 33% of the dollars would be with people that had been with them less than a year.
Yeah. So just within
right now
6 months, if I do my math right, I mean, you're talking like a $2 to $3 million savings in 6 months.
Yeah, the return on investment is, you can't even measure it. I mean, it becomes, it's so large for what the costs are for that. I think this program was around $70,000 or $8,000. So yeah, the return on investment is, you can't even, you can't even.
A few $1,000s to save 3 million.
Yeah, yes. So anyways, it's a phenomenal result. It's the largest single client study I think I've ever seen, I've ever done. And you can't imagine how excited I was when I saw these results. So, well, with that, I don't know if there are questions. I don't know if they can call in or chat in there if there are other questions that you might have, or things. Nobody buys this first time to just see it. We usually do follow-up meetings. So if there's somebody that's with a large employer that's interested, we're happy to do a webinar specifically for you and the different people. If you are a consultant or somebody that you're trying to work with your clients, we're happy to do a webinar on that. So whatever way we could help you on that, but this is a great tool, and for a consultant like me, it helps me solve problems for my clients.
Yeah, let's see. What are we looking at from a cost basis? So yeah, you're typically looking at somewhere between $30 and $50 per hire. So you can just look at how many hires you did in the last 12 months, and the larger employers, the more hires you make, obviously be closer to that 30. The smaller the employers, closer to that $50 per hire type of cost. That usually calculates down to a few dollars per candidate tested.
Oh, I see you have a slide up here.
Yeah, so this is for any of HR professionals on the call. We do offer continuing education credit. So if you're SHRM or HRCI, go ahead and get your code there so you can get your continuing education credit there. So thank you for joining us if you're in the HR world.
Other questions? This in the chat.
Any questions about anything? One thing I know we didn't talk about, and I think is important to talk about, look, this is an amazing product. We're very excited to represent it and to be part of it. But I think there's a lot involved with, reducing and managing your risk as an employer, right? There are safety programs, building a safety culture, although integrity testing is integral in building a safety culture. But how you do that, the other things you do to support a safety culture and the safety training programs that you put on are obviously things that we think are very important, right? Claims management, and then there's a leadership component of this. There's actually some comments on the LinkedIn post that we were promoting this webinar, people talking about how important hiring leaders are, developing leaders, having leaders who, lead with empathy, but, are also making good hiring decisions. I mean, there's all sorts of factors that the leadership is. And that was kind of the interesting thing for me. I mean, we do a lot of leadership assessments, right? We do assessments for the NFL and major league sports teams and things like that. And so, we're really big in that area. And this was just a great complementary tool that we're very happy that entered our world here because it kind of completes full circle. But those other factors are really important, and Gary can speak to that. But I guess the thing is, the difference is, I mean, how much effort those things take versus integrity testing. Maybe you can share experience about that.
One thing that was really interesting to me when we looked at that large employer, when we first did the pilot, not only did we have lower losses from the people that were hired during that time period, but the overall organizations that used the integrity testing did much better overall, all employees. And that has to do with the pain and the impact that a poor hire has, not just on themselves of getting hurt, but just the impact that makes on the overall organization on that end of it. So like from my end of it, I'm still, basic 101 in terms of management commitment, doing the right things and training people and safety. And there's a lot of work we do on the claim end of it, from taking care of people to managing the claim, to getting them the right treatment and the medical. Well, this tool helps with those challenging situations that are just so hard to control.
Yeah. And I'm going to try to throw in here, anyone interested in learning more offline, here's a link to schedule a call, and I'll throw that in the Q&A, and oh yeah, there's the chat, and then I'll throw that in there as well. And the chat, if anybody's interested in scheduling a call here, we drop in here a scheduling link. This is my spelling there. Okay, cool. There you go. Yeah, feel free to jump on a call with us. And, again, whether it's a more holistic program that kind of Gary puts on, and really looking at those 4 areas, the leadership, the safety training, culture kind of development, claims management, as well as the hiring practices. I mean, that's where Gary's really excellent in helping put together more complete 360 programs. Definitely happy to get you connected with him. We'll also send a follow-up email out with options to schedule a call, to the recording, links to the massive studies that have been done here. So if you're into reading all those boring things, you can, but like I am, but it's very impressive. So we'll share that there, but you'll have a link there to connect and schedule a call with us. And happy to review your specific situation, and maybe that's adding integrity testing to a really great program. You definitely know a lot of organizations that put a lot of time and energy into their safety programs, and they do a great job. This is just one more tool to, continue to strengthen that and strengthen their safety culture. Or maybe, you're a 90% turnover and 50%, 50% of your claims are coming from frontline or first year hires. And you really want to look at reducing that even in a much more significant way. Then that's somebody, we'd want to bring Gary in, and you'd want to be talking to him. And he does these amazing whiteboard sessions. So he does these consultations with organizations where he does all of the assessment and analysis of all of those different 4 programs. And then he spells out the blueprint and the recipe for doing it. And then companies, choose to hire him to bake the cake for him, to execute the recipe. And, he has a huge, remarkable results. So I just can't say enough about the work that Gary does, and really appreciate, your thoughtfulness in taking a big picture, holistic, and then the nitty gritty details you get into to solving the problems. And yeah, that's a lot of work, but some simple tools like an integrity tool can just, make a lot easier, right?
All the way around in many ways.
Yeah, cool.
All
Well,
right.
great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. If there are no other questions, let me see. We got a question here. Okay, I'll grab your phone number there, Red, and I'll work to follow up with you there. And appreciate your time, guys. And we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.